Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen we're making an easy and amazing cream cheese pound cake. So let's get started. First off, set your oven to 325. It shouldn't be too hot because then the cake will burn. Now we're gonna deal with our butter, and I wanna point out that you want room temperature butter. A lot of people ask what that means. The butter is softened to the point where my finger can really make a nice indent without trying too hard, and the butter is nice and bendable. If it's cold, room temperature is just not gonna happen, so microwave the butter on 50% power for a few seconds until it's nice and soft. Into my stand mixer, fitted with a paddle attachment or a big bowl if you're using a hand mixer, I'm adding 1.5 cups or 339 grams of unsalted room temperature butter. All right, in you go. Now we're gonna beat our butter for about 2 minutes on medium speed until it is, making sure the paddle is attached and the bowl is in your mixer properly. We're gonna beat our butter on medium for about 2 minutes until it's nice and fluffy. You wanna pump some air into it and really cream it up. Pound cake is unleavened. There's no baking powder, there's no baking soda, there's no fluffed up egg whites. So it's a pleasantly dense cake. And this means you have to really fluff your butter up. And for this recipe, we're using a secret ingredient in the title. It's cream cheese. The cream cheese is gonna give you a really tender cake. It's gonna melt in your mouth, and it has that lovely tangy flavor to contrast with the sugar. About a minute of mixing later, I'm gonna take the paddle out and show you the texture is very nice and fluffy, but it's gonna be even fluffier. You wanna fluff that butter and the cream cheese up before we add the eggs and flour. Once you add the flour in, you are mixing on low and just until combined. If you overmix it, it'll be gummy and just not taste the same. So scrape the bowl down. Today it's kind of a cold day, so my cream cheese is basically room temperature, but I'm keeping it in my apron so it stays nice and warm. The counter will suck the heat out of your ingredients, and if you live someplace cold, you could have the heat on, it could be nice and cozy, but your countertop is like a freezer and it'll make everything so cold it won't mix well. All mixed up, this looks beautiful, and now it's time to add 8 ounces or 226 grams of softened cream cheese. Let your mixer run, and then you're gonna scrape it down. The scraping down is kind of like the most intense thing you're gonna do in this recipe, just because you don't wanna have clumps of butter or cream cheese on the bottom. They're not gonna mix really well. This cake needs 2.5 cups or 450 grams of granulated sugar. I'm gonna measure that out right now. By the way, if you like my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's 2 new recipes every single week and always something delicious on the horizon. Now we're gonna add our sugar in and mix for about 2 minutes, scraping down the bowl frequently. And if you're saying, oh my gosh, that's a lot of sugar, well, it's gonna be a lot of everything. This is a big bundt cake, but the sugar doesn't just add sweetness, it's gonna soften the cake as well. Scrape the bowl down. This is a beautiful softened mixture, you can tell from the texture. While that's creaming up, I'm gonna crack 6 room temperature eggs into a bowl so they're ready and there are no shells. Room temperature eggs are great because they're gonna mix better than a cold egg. And also, whenever you're making a cake, it's nice to use room temperature ingredients so it bakes a little bit more evenly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I love these blue eggs, but the shells are really thin. Cake batter already looks like a fluffy cloud. Look at that color. It's almost pure white. It's very cloudy and soft. And that is the perfect time to start adding our eggs in. I will mention that once you add the eggs in, this mixture will break. So it's not gonna be silky smooth. You'll see kind of like a cottage cheesy texture. That's fine, it's just because you're adding so much liquid from those eggs. Right now we're gonna mix on medium-low and add our eggs in about 1 at a time. We're doing this just to give the eggs a chance to really incorporate well. If you just dumped 6 eggs in, it would be kind of a mess and really hard to get an even, consistent, homogeneous batter. After a couple eggs, go ahead and make sure to scrape the bowl down. John's video of telling you to scrape the bowl down over and over again. It's important. Back to mixing. There are a ton of different flavor combinations you can add in here. I'm making a simple vanilla cake today because that's one of my favorites. But you could add a couple tablespoons of orange or lemon zest or both to get a nice citrusy twist. I love the lift you get from zest. I would just add the zest in towards the beginning of the recipe so it really gets a chance to abrade and get all that oil worked out. The last egg goes in. Whoop. My last egg is in, and you can see here the texture still super cloudy, not bad, but there is a little bit of like that breakage happening, and that's totally fine. Our final wet ingredient, 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Let that really mix in. I have a recipe for this on the channel, but you're basically just gonna have vanilla beans, and you can buy them online in bulk. Makes a great present. And this is bottled with any alcohol to help seep the flavor out. So you could use vodka, rum, bourbon, really personalize it and get a nice combination of flavors. Now we're gonna add the flour in. I'm just gonna add it straight into my bowl, so I'm going to use my scale one more time. I want 3 cups or 360 grams of flour. This is the point where you can add too much if you're using a measuring cup, and even though your batter has been picture perfect up to this point, you'll get a denser, drier, breadier, less delicious cake. So you want to add the correct amount of flour, which is just enough to hold the batter together. Scale is perfect for this. 360 grams minus 1 tablespoon because I added a little bit too much. For contrast, half a teaspoon of salt. Sprinkle that in. Now we're gonna mix this on the lowest speed. So you don't wanna mix this until it's combined. I wanna mix this until it is almost combined. Just a few seconds, really. This is a horrible, funky looking mixture, but we're gonna work it together with a spatula, go all the way down to the bottom where things are totally unmixed, and bring that batter up to the top. My batter is nicely mixed. Set this aside and grab a 10 to 12 cup bundt pan or tube pan. This needs a little prep or things will get stuck. For your bundt pan, you could of course butter and flour this, or you can use baking spray. We're baking the cake at a lower temperature today, and that's important because it gives it a nice even bake. But when you use baking spray, it tends to really burn and give you a dark crust, which I don't like. If you use a lower temperature though, that doesn't happen. So we can go the easier option and just give this a nice even coat. I love butter, but buttering and flouring this kind of bundt pan is a little bit of a labor. Perfectly coated. You could use a triggered ice cream scoop, or you can kind of carefully just dollop it in to the bottom of your pan. You want to get a nice even layer and just have everything kind of scooched all the way down. So you can use your spatula and work the batter around. It's just to prevent air bubbles. Use your spatula to get a nice, even, bubble-free layer. And now, as an added insurance policy, over a kitchen towel, you can give it a couple taps or even take it onto the floor if you have a carpet. This is ready to go into the oven, 325 for 70 to 85 minutes or until a skewer comes out clean. If you notice your cake taking on too much color, go ahead and tent it with foil to protect that nice golden color. We're gonna pop this into the oven and then I'll show you how to get it out. Once your beautiful cream cheese pound cake comes out of the oven, let it cool for about 10 minutes and then we're gonna invert this onto a wire rack. It needs to cool completely, so that has to happen out of the pan. If you let the cake cool in the pan, it's just gonna get stuck because the butter will harden. Look how gorgeous that is. It is a perfect color. Allow your cake to cool to room temperature, then give it a nice dusting of powdered sugar, slice it up and serve with berries, whipped cream, or ice cream. The texture on this cake is wild. It just melts in your mouth. It is beyond tender, and the flavor with the vanilla and the cream cheese is on point. I hope you get a chance to make this easy, delicious recipe, and if you like my videos, check out my bundt cake playlist and hit that subscribe button.